What's going on, everyone? Welcome back along to the channel. Today we have, of course, the Super Rugby preview. We're going to be looking ahead to round number 4, which kicks off this Friday. Of course, we have a special guest back on the show for this week's edition. But first things first, before we look at that and have a look at the games coming up, we've got a couple of things to take care of first. And of course, if you've been tuning into these for the last few years, you'll know there's two things: yellow cards and SuperBru picks and leaderboards. And just quickly, for those of you who are around the channel a lot, the reason why I haven't had much content coming out, as you can probably still tell by my voice, have been a bit ill with the flu, but we'll be keeping the Super Rugby going, of course, as per always, regardless of health conditions, but we'll have much more content resuming over the coming days as well. So that is why that's going on, and please excuse my voice over the following video if it does get a bit raspy throughout and probably towards the end. So first things first, yellow cards. I think we're having a little bit of chat about these with our guest today, so I won't go on about these too much, but we are sitting on 18 yellow cards from the completion of round number 3. So looking for plenty more, I'd imagine, in the up-and-coming weekend as well. And the other thing is, of course, the SuperBru leaderboard. So let's have a look at them right now. First things first, let's have a look at the Predictor Leaderboard, where it was NZ Rugby Fan 460 leading the way after the first couple of rounds. He's still there. Christian still leading the way at the top of the leaderboard, sitting with 16.5 points, which he has actually somehow dislodged Bulldozer from that top spot, despite the two teams having equal amounts of points. We'll be coming down to that margin difference that just gives him the little nudge into that number 1 spot. It's 3 Crowns 1 who sits in third with 16, and he sits there with a good number of other players who are also on 16 points. So not much movement around the top 3, but there's a lot of movement around the rest of the leaderboard. We have our yellow cap winner, Rugger Jasmine, who sits down there in 16th, up 26 positions and taking the yellow cap for round number 3. We also have the Driving Maul having a huge drop away in form there, down 14 spots, going into 20th. So he's down in my league here, as I'm down here, only down 11 though, not dropping as much as the Driving Maul, but still sitting there in 26th. Not really what I want to be at all, but I'm on 14 points, only a couple games away from getting up to those top spots. The other guest of note that we've had on the show that is in the competition is Brett Hartley. You can see him down there in 37th position, down 2, only 2, but really, Brett, what are you doing down in 37th for start off? You should be much higher than that. Brett's picks going down the dunny in a big, big way. Other than that, plenty of others down further along. We've got EB Chris 1 with the wooden spoon for round number 3, and all the way down to the bottom of the table there. So still leading, and right at the top is NZ Rugby Fan 460. How about the fantasy team? Let's take a look at that now, and it is our same leader once again, with Yalit Mateo's Outstanding Dinosaurs leading the way with 653 points, and in second, coming up from 7th or 9th position, coming up 7 spots, is B Coventry's Giant Philanthropist. What a name. I mean, that is a dreadfully poor name to have to read out, but he stormed up the leaderboard. Pretty sure he had the yellow cap in round 2 as well, so doing very, very well as B Coventry to get his way up into 2nd spot. We also have Sticky Toilet Actions sitting in 3rd, and MFCFO's Blues, the carryover champion, sitting in 4th spot. We go further on down the leaderboard looking for other teams of note. We see Caleb 42N is there with the yellow cap. So that's our defending champion from the Predictor, is getting yellow cap now in the fantasy teams as well. And then there's the Mighty All Flakes, 25th. That's my fantasy side, going down a couple of spots, but still where we expect to be, mid-table on both of these leaderboards. So yeah, it's been an average kind of week so far for us. Where have we got some others of note? The Western Sharks, there's who I was looking for. Brett Hartley's side also down 2 into 30th position. So not going too good for us at our picks at the moment, but we are still there or thereabouts, which is always a good place to be. Looking for the wooden spooners down the bottom. Blues for days, and Keegan 01 letting everyone down with no points. You've got to have a team, guys, if you want to be in there to beat the best of us. But that is it for the leaderboards. Let's get on to what we're really about here. It is prediction time for round 4. Okay, so what we're really here for is to preview round 4 of Super Rugby. And like I said earlier, we do have a guest coming back to the channel after previewing the Australian Conference. It's TheScottishCannon. Welcome back, and hope you've got lots to say about how the first few rounds of Super Rugby have gone.
Of course, Australia's doing much better this year, so I can't really complain. But we just look like we're doing better because we're playing Japan the entire time.
Hey, a win's a win. That's all that matters. But plenty to talk about. First things first, I wanted to ask you about, though, is in the build-up to this video, we did have a little bit of a recap of yellow cards we were sitting so far. We've had 18 this season in 3 rounds. I didn't want to ask what you thought about that. I wanted to ask you if you think there should be less yellow cards in Super Rugby. Is it ruining the spectacle of the game?
Well, that's been a big debate in recent times, especially in the media over here in Australia, that especially in that game the Reds played against the Rebels, there was a red card in the first 5 minutes or so to Scott Higginbotham, and then a few minutes later there was a yellow card that should have been a red. So, you know, it's funny because I see a lot of people are saying that rugby should not have a send-off rule anymore, and I've been reading articles all over the place saying that it completely kills the game. Rugby's meant to be 15 or 15, and you know, I was strongly on the side of, but if you've made the indiscretion that you should be punished for it for 10 minutes, whatever. But I do sort of think recently that there has been a bit of an overreaction in the yellow card department. And seeing on the weekend, the Reds game again, a tackle which was very, you know, it was definitely a penalty to Caleb Timu. But honestly, did it deserve a yellow card? Probably not. Are those the guidelines from World Rugby? Yes. Was the call from a referee's perspective? Yes. Did it kill the game? Not really. So it really just sort of depends on the context. I mean, as a referee, I give out yellows depending on what I'm told. If it's over the horizontal, it's a yellow card. If there's force with the shoulder, it's a yellow card. So at the end of the day, players really aren't adapting to the much stricter guidelines that World Rugby and the referees are cracking down on, because this is no one, you know, the professional rugby players and should be able to adapt and be flexible to the current guidelines. So I do think they're just killing the game a little bit, especially that Reds game to open the season against the Rebels. You know, the Rebels said the best team in Australia because they destroyed the Reds by 30 points. That's not the case. I mean, they played some of that game with 13 men on the field. So, you know, I sort of think rugby should be 15 on 15, but at the same time, there needs to be a punishment for the person that makes the indiscretion.
Yep, and also while we're talking about this sort of thing, just because it's kind of a topical thing at the moment, and probably might not be by the time we talk to you again, this whole thing that's going on with yellow cards and penalty tries being given at the same time. What's your thought of that?
Ooh. That, for me, I'm not a fan of that at all, and that's coming from a referee. That if there's a penalty try or there's something that is probably going to be a try, you have to give a penalty try and a yellow card. I don't really understand why that guideline is in place, because for a lot of people in that game, it was the Crusaders Chiefs, I think, in that final couple minutes, final 9 minutes.
That was the big one.
High tackle, a few meters out from the line to the head, and then there was no choice but a yellow card and a penalty try. So in that situation, was a penalty try warranted? Probably. Should it have been a yellow card? No. So I don't understand why us referees are backed into a corner when clear as day, it probably is going to be a try if it wasn't for the high tackle. But why should it be a sin bin as well? It's a double whammy when it doesn't need to be.
And it also happens to the Jaguares later on that week as well, I think, or the next round in a breakdown close to the line. So
yeah, wasn't that a slap down?
No, that was a penalty try. Oh, yes, it was. That one was too. Yes, that was the one I was thinking of. Yep. So it does happen. I mean, I agree with you. I think it should be one or the other. But anyway, good to see your thoughts on that anyway to start us off. But let's get into the games. Round 4 kicks off in Dunedin, Forsyth Bar. We've got the Highlanders up against the Stormers. So the Highlanders, you got to say the draw's been a bit too kind to them early on. They got 2 byes in the first 7 rounds of the competition. And when you start off in a spectacular form like they did in round 2, do you see them being able to recreate that? And Do you think this is a team that's once again been underestimated? Do you think this is a team that's going under the radar and maybe playing once in the first 3 weeks? You know, again, people are forgetting what the Highlanders offer this competition.
Well, I mean, Highlanders were one of the form teams last year. They went on like 11 win streak or something, 11 or 12 win streak, and did that get killed by the Crusaders or something? They've got so much talent down in your part of the world, in Invercargill and in Southland. Aaron Smith, Wasaki Naholo, tons of talent down there. And, it's surprising that a lot of people are writing them off. But I think people are writing them off because they've only seen them play one game. It's weird with the format this year that, South Africa started 2 weeks early. We now figured out why that was because South Africa is actually playing a test match against Wales outside the international window, which I would like to quickly get your thoughts on. Do you think Super Rugby should be compromised for that test in Washington?
Oh, it's a tough call, isn't it? When you got to pick between international and club, but I mean, we've seen it for how many seasons now? Every single year, it seems to be that one conference or two conferences will start earlier than the others. So it's nothing new, but the guidelines or the dates are made to be kind of stuck to. You think they would make a bit of an effort to stick to them and put them inside that window, or do it later in the year or something. But it works. It kind of does stuff up the start of the season with the South African teams. But and I think it's going to mess up the Highlanders a bit because it's all nice and having these buys early on, but later on in the season they're going to have to go a long period without getting any rest or any buys, where the other teams are going to get some.
Well, they will get a June break, so that's one thing I'm not a big fan of. I'm glad this is the last window of June internationals before Super Rugby is all the way through, and then the July internationals. But I think the Highlanders, they obviously got that good win against the Blues, but it's the Blues, right? They're the worst team in New Zealand. And while they are getting better, for some reason they couldn't even get over the line against the Chiefs. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But, the Highlanders, too much talent not to do well this season. I'm a big fan of how the Highlanders play and I'd love to see them do well. But, they're going to build into their season, which can be a good and bad thing.
Yep, so guess their second game in round 4. It's almost unheard of, isn't it, in a competition like this? But they're up against the Stormers, who not now having the greatest tour so far. They're a choke against the Waratahs on the biggest scale of them all, and then a bit of a schooling from the Crusaders. But what I was pleased about seeing that from the Stormers was how they did come back in that middle stanza of the match. And I thought in patches they are superb. They're one of the best teams from Africa, definitely for sure, but dreadful in other passages of the game. What lets them down, I think, is their decision-making. Seems to be completely off the scale at some points of the game. Massive ability, great team, great players, but will we see the best of them on tour, or are they mentally already on the plane back to Africa?
Well, you can't be mentally back on Africa. I mean, that's the thing, though, is that now the Super Rugby format's back to the Super 15 style. South African teams have 3 or 4 game tours now, and that normally it's very rare for them to win on the road, and especially in New Zealand. No team internationally can win in New Zealand. I don't know what it is. Is it something in the water over there, or is it just because New Zealand's so good? I don't know, but Stormers, they should have won that game against the Waratahs. I thought they were the better team for most of that game. They came back against the Crusaders, but again, getting 45 points put on them, you just can't do much about it. You can't concede 34 points and then 45 points and expect to win on a weekly basis. So there needs to be something that the Stormers need to fix up defensively. Will the Highlanders break them open? Potentially. Will the Stormers, because it's the last game of tour, be on the plane back to Africa? Potentially. Will the Stormers maybe win the opening few minutes and then Highlanders come back in the final 20? Probably. But I just hope it's an entertaining game, because that first game the Highlanders played was probably a game of the season so far against the Blues.
It's two similar style teams in a way, isn't it? But we've seen both of them like to attack, they like to play. Defence isn't the highest priority as it is for most Super Rugby teams, really. So I'd expect there should be a lot of attacking play, a lot of interesting play, a lot of points scored, at least for sure. I do think that the way the Stormers have been going, unable to really put 80 minutes or even 60 minutes together in one chunk is going to be their downfall. But I do think they're going to push the Highlanders a good way. If they can keep their head in it for that whole time, is going to be the big question for them. And like I say, conceding points like that, like their game against the Crusaders was over really before it even started. Even though despite their good comeback, it was never going to happen. So big factor that's going to decide this match for you between these two sides, and obviously your margin of victory. Who's going to win this one?
Highlanders to win this one by 10 points, closer than a lot of people expect, because Highlanders had the slow start, as well as the Stormers probably thinking about, I want to get back to South Africa. But yeah, it's going to come down to just which team is playing the more open style of game, which one's holding the ball more down in the beautiful inside stadium in Dunedin.
Yeah, that's the other thing to mention too, is it is going to be dry underfoot. It's going to be good for attacking rugby, which is going to play into both these two teams' hands. I think I've gone Highlanders by just 8. So I'm pretty much in agreement with you there. And it's interesting to see what you said about that Stormers game versus the Waratahs. I was going to ask you that later on, but alas, you've answered it already. The Waratahs, we'll be talking about them very, very well at the end, because they're the last team. So plenty to talk about there. Let's move on to the second game. The Rebels versus the Brumbies. That one's at Amy Park. It's a home game for the Rebels. Yes. You mentioned these guys at the start a little bit. The Rebels, the results, they've been great. Big wins, good wins, lots of points. But
top
personally,
of the table.
What's that? Sorry.
Top of the table.
They are top of the table. But I'm kind of agreeing with what you said before. I'm not convinced that they are the real deal at the moment. A bit disappointing in patches. Like I spoke about in the last preview for round 3. Didn't score in that last 20 minutes or so against that Reds team. Really struggled at the start of that game versus the Reds. Against the Sunwolves, yeah, they put them away but easier than the Brumbies, which could play into this match in terms of predicting it. But are you convinced that these guys are the hot shots that everyone is calling them out to be?
Well, I expect them to be where they should be a few weeks down the line. I mean, they've got so much talent. We talked about this before. They've got so much talent down in Melbourne. Welgenia, half of the Western Force, former Western Force, Jack Debrasini, a ton of other great players, David Horwitz, all playing down in Melbourne. They all should come together. Jeff Parling, former British and Irish Lion. There is so much talent coming down and playing in Melbourne that it's almost criminal if they don't do well this season. And, I think Dave Wessels at the helm is going to be a big part of that. A lot of people actually really love the way he plays. He absolutely got stuck into the Rebels after that Reds match as well. They were doing double training sessions because he wasn't happy with their performance, even though they won by 30 points. So that's the type of coach that you need, a bit of tough love, and really get the most out of your players. I mean, Adam Coleman's there, Will Genia's there, who is by far the best 9 in Australia. It's almost criminal if they don't do well this season. So, they've got a relatively good draw as well starting the season. Had the Reds, won that game with the red card. Sunwolves away in Tokyo isn't too difficult to win, but don't tell the Blues. And and the Brumbies, obviously, who have traveled their first 2 games and have to travel for their 3rd game. I think that's pretty bad. Very bad scheduling on the part of Sanzar, because they haven't even had a home game yet, and we're 4 weeks into the season. So I expect the Rebels to get stuck in, and they probably should win this game, even though the Brumbies are the more renowned team in Australia.
Yeah, the Brumbies were the team many expected to top the table, and I think prematurely, I think a lot of people are calling all the pundits on the Rebels as well after just 2 matches. But I'm with you. I'm reserving that for a while yet. I'm impressed by the improvement of a lot of the Australian teams, like the Reds especially. We'll talk about them though later on. But the Brumbies, like I said, we talked about them to be conference winners or up there with the best, but they have looked far from that. And an area of the game that we talked pre-season about what's going to be their strength was, of course, their pack. It's in dismay. It's absolutely getting bullied by other teams. Do you think they can turn this around? Is this something that's just going to be coached to improvement? Or is it something like Pocock returning later on this month that's going to change this pack for the Brumbies?
It could be just the David Pocock effect. I mean, he makes the Wallabies. You saw in the 2015 Rugby World Cup. If Pocock wasn't there, they wouldn't have made the final by any chance. I mean, I think we were talking about this at the start of the season as well. The Brumbies really don't have too much X factor apart from a David Pocock, a Henry Spader, or Tavita Kiranjani. I'm not a fan of their halves combination. I don't like Howard. I'm not really a huge fan of Joel Powell. I do like him, but I don't think he's the top 9 in Australia by any means. And I don't know what it is with the Brumbies, because they've got Dan McKellar, the new coach there. They've had Laurie Fisher coming back as assistant. Is it Laurie Fisher? Someone Fisher.
Yep.
The Laurie Fisher. Yeah.
Guy,
Yep. With the crazy hair.
Yep.
He's a great assistant coach. So you really think the Brumbies should be well coached. But I don't know. They could have a very slow start to the season and end up coming back strong because they have most of their games at home. The Canberra will be negative degrees when a few South African teams come over. So, I am expecting the Brumbies to hit back. I don't know why that they have had such a slow start. But at the end of the day, Super Rugby is 18 rounds with a final series. So they've got plenty of time. They got the good win over the Sunwolves. Probably should have done much better against the Reds. They didn't concede a try against the Reds, but it was their ill-discipline that cost them the match. You normally see that in the Six Nations, so I just thought that was crazy when that happened, especially when Caleb Timmy was out the field from 10 minutes. Anyway, I don't know why the Brumbies didn't do better then. But, Brumbies will click. I think it'll take a couple more games. Getting back home to GIL Stadium and Canberra will be a big part of that, but I think Rebels will be too strong here.
Yep. Have you got a margin on that one?
I'll go Rebels by 9.
By 9? Well, see, going quite large. So Rebels do it quite... Well, the way the season's gone, that's got to be considered easily, I'd say. I'm going Rebels by just 3. Just 3 points. Right. That's all I've got them by. I think it's going to be close, but the Brumbies are just a woeful case at the moment, and I think they need to get home, and they need to change that pack around big time, and the Rebels can get it over them in the forwards. It could be a long night for the Brumbies again.
Rebels still have a few players out as well, so as soon as they come back, that team's going to be just amazing.
Yeah, they've got a multi-talented squad, isn't it? It's interesting that you mentioned Jeff Parling as well. Lasted 20 minutes in his first Super Rugby game. Interesting to see how he goes next week, if he's fit to play as well. Of course, none of the teams been named on recording this either, so we're all going in blind, as you could say. Right, so we're both going for the Rebels on that one as well. Copycat on those ones. Also, next up, right, the Hurricanes. They're back at home.
Ooh.
They've started off their season on the road. They've been to Africa. They've got the tour out of the way. They come back to Westpac. But who's waiting there? But the defending champions, the Crusaders. What a welcoming party. Game of the weekend. Yeah, I'd say that. But you've got to say the Hurricanes have been far from convincing in their opening couple of games. Definitely, I'd say, look better against the Jaguares last weekend. But do you think this team is becoming a bit too dependent on Beauden Barrett?
I think they're quite reliant on Beauden Barrett, but they've got so much talent that I don't understand why they've had such a slow start. You've got Blade Thompson, you got all the Barrett brothers, TJ Perinara, you got Julian Savia, you got everyone in, their backline star-studded. Why have the Hurricanes taken a while to move in and start their season off on a strong foot? Is it because they're traveling to start the season, because they went all around the globe to open their games? Potentially, is New Zealand going to rejuvenate them? Is jet lag going to be an effect? Probably not. It's a tough one because I don't understand why the Canes have started off so slow. They have got one win from 2 on tour, which any team really would take on tour to South Africa and Argentina. If you take one win or points away from any of those 2 games, you normally say that tours are somewhat of a success. But Crusaders. The Crusaders are back there, and it should be a very fascinating match. I'm interested to see because the Crusaders still have quite a few injuries, so I'm just interested to see how the Hurricanes are going to really try to exploit a few of their weaknesses in that pack.
Yeah, the Hurricanes look like a completely different team from their Bulls game to the Jaguares game. Now, yes, a lot of different factors. That Bulls pack was playing on fire, something that we haven't seen or probably won't see for a long time from a South African team again. They were playing that good, but I did notice even in that game against the Bulls, the difference when Barrett come on, even at fullback, he just takes up so much defensive consciousness of the players that they have to focus so many people on him. Ehai West starting their first game, he was almost a non-event. No one needs to really
Yeah.
worry about him. They covered him easily, and that allowed more attention to go on to the centres and the wingers, the back three. Those guys could all be covered a lot easier. Barrett on the field, you've got to watch those inside channels, and that straight away allowed more space for the Laumapes. That allowed more spaces for the Saviers, who started to come into the game as well. So I think he is massive to that team, and an injury, a decent injury to him this season, or if they keep chopping and changing him in and out, it could prove costly for the year. As for the Crusaders, though, you mentioned injuries. I think the side's just got far too much depth. They just keep churning out players. More players, they just keep playing at their quality level as well. But this is going to be their toughest test so far, coming up against a team like the Hurricanes, who are good enough on paper to beat them. But do you think the team's actually taken anything from that little period that the Stormers had against Crusaders last weekend, where they could actually take some pointers and, a way to actually take some points off these Crusaders?
Yeah, well, I actually had the Canes winning this game, and I actually predicted Canes to win the Super Rugby Championship this year, so I've got to stay by my pick at the start of the season. But, it's too much talent not to do well. The Crusaders are the best well-coached, best structured team in the comp. Obviously have a lot of depth, but I feel like the Hurricanes, they're going to be up for it. They've seen the Crusaders play. They know the Crusaders play so well. And it's up to the Crusaders to shut Barrett brothers. Someone came out in the media this week and said that Beauden Barrett is going to be better than Dan Carter. And
It was Ronan O'Gara,
I don't know
wasn't
if
it?
I agree with that. Who was it?
Ronan O'Gara, I think, coaching at the Crusaders.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. Dan Carter is, second best player ever to play the game after Richie McCaw. So not really sure if I agree with that, but he does have a lot of talent. He's much quicker than Dan Carter. His kicking's not as good, but I really do want to see how the game does transpire, because the Crusaders do have a couple of injuries and also got exposed for a few minutes against the Stormers. So if the Canes get their defense together, take some confidence from their win in Argentina, then it should be a very tight contest.
I feel like we're going to be on a different ledger here. What's your pick?
I'm going Hurricanes by 2 points.
Ooh, we've got a difference maker. I'm going Crusaders. I'm going Crusaders by 11. Far from convinced by what I've seen from the Hurricanes on their tour. And it's Crusaders just rolling. They're just rolling. They're going to be hard to stop. It's going to take some super impressive performance to put that Crusaders team away. But, like you say, the team, the potential is there. The talent is there. There's no question about that at all. Right. That's 3 games done. Let's move into our next match. Across the ditch, we're going to your country, but it's Suncorp, where the next match will be played between the Reds and the Bulls. Now, let's talk about the Reds first. We've mentioned them a little bit already, but that pack performance that we've seen from them against the Brumbies, do you think that's an effect of just Brad Thorne? The fact that they are playing a 4-dominated game, taking kicks, not scoring tries, another effect of Brad Thorne, do you think? And a shock result, but do you consider the Reds now to be contenders in Australia?
No, I don't yet. No, I'm not convinced. I think that discipline needs to be fixed ASAP. They can't keep giving away yellow cards for the sake of it and expect to win a match. The Brumbies just clearly went on that day and were giving away dumb penalties as well. What did look good was the red scrum, though. So, that's something that was very, very interesting to see, because the Brumbies, on the paper, have a better pack than a very young red side. But I do think the Brad Thorne effect will take a few, will take a couple seasons to hit in. Some people are telling me that Brad Thorne's thinking about winning a championship in 2020 instead of 2018. It's difficult to see how the Reds are going to do when they've got so much young blood playing. They've got John O'Lance, who's decided to go up to England, so they need to start thinking about who's going to be the best 10 at the Reds. Are they bringing Quay Cooper back? Are they bringing Carmichael Hunt back? I don't know. There's too many things happening with the Reds on and off the field that it's very hard to get behind them. One win against the Brumbies at home when they didn't score a try, for me, is not too convincing. So I do think they'll win this game, but I'm not convinced by the Reds by any means until they start playing the New Zealand sides or the Waratahs or maybe even the Rebels, which they got destroyed again. I would like to see that return match. And then, maybe like the Lions. There's a few other teams that I think are miles out of the Reds at the moment that I just can't really put any money on them because there's too many things happening around their bubble.
So they're up against the Bulls from South Africa.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much you've seen of the Bulls in the opening few rounds, but especially against the Hurricanes, their pack, we talked about already, was just destructive. It destroyed all comers. The second row, just barnstorming, smashing tackles, offloading. The party was well and truly on fire. Against the Lions, though, last weekend, much less effective. Against a pack that was a lot more settled, not touring, not doing what we've seen from the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes falling off a lot more tackles, a lot less defensively sound. Do you think that was due to their opponent, or do you think this is just the Bulls was their one-off wonder, and much like was expected pre-season, they're going to fall back down the ladder?
See, I had Bulls in, I think, last place in the South African Conference. So I was, like everyone, I was very surprised with how they played against the Hurricanes. So it's very hard to look into it because they beat a very poor Canes side, but had 49 points put on them by the Lions as well. So it's, I don't know, they did score 35 points, but letting in 49 points, that is a lot of bloody points. You're not going to win a game if you concede 49 points. So, it's going to be very interesting to see because the Reds have been struggling with attack recently as well. So I don't know. This game could be a very physical game, could be very defensively orientated, and probably the more disciplined side will probably win this game.
Interesting you mentioned that last as well, because that game was, I think, 28-21 just after half-time, and at one point it was 21 all as well. But the Bulls did get 2 yellow cards and a penalty try. Bang, 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 pretty much within the space of 5-10 minutes, which really killed that match off completely. The fact that they were right in that game and challenging that Lions team, it still looks really, really good for them. And I think coming over to Australia, they're in probably the best place. That result doesn't look good, but I think if they go back and watch it, they can say, yeah, up to that point where our discipline let us down, we were right in that game with arguably one of the best teams in the competition. So the Bulls are definitely, I think, a lot better. I had them last as well. I had them to be absolutely dead last, but South Africa is looking a lot better. I think if this Bulls team can do what they did against the Hurricanes all season long, they can build on that and keep that up. They're going to be very, very, very tough to beat. Coming to Australia and playing the Reds, though, do you think that they can get the cookies against the boys from Queensland?
This one's a very tough one to call because A, the Bulls have had to do a lot of travel. B, it's very hard to look in at the Reds because they're so ill-disciplined and didn't score a try in the last match. Are the Reds going to win this game? Maybe, because South Africa doesn't like traveling well. That's always the excuse I go for when the South African side is traveling. Are they playing the Reds at the best time of the season? Yes. Is this game winnable for them away from home on tour? Yes. I don't know. I'm sitting on the fence at the moment. You need to tell me your prediction before I make mine, I think.
Okay. I'm going for the tourist. Bulls by 9. That's my pick. But I'm probably going to say at least 3 yellow cards as well.
Probably. It's a hard one because the Reds pack needs to step up. South African scrums are always very good. Reds have probably got the best scrum in Australia at the moment, so I'll be interested to see how that one transpires. I'm gonna go Reds by a point.
Ooh, by a point. Yeah, I agree with what you say. The pack battle is going to be immense. 2 teams just recently really have shown that their pack is up there to be one of the best. So who turns up? There's going to be things. Can the Reds do it again against another team that has a pretty good pack as well? And what we see from the Bulls, I really hope the Bulls do keep that style of play up because it was really good to watch. It was really good to watch, really good to see those guys making those massive busts, making the offloads. It was amazing. The Bulls, one of the most decorated teams in Super Rugby, especially from Africa, the most. So good to see them coming back and getting to that top level where they should be. So you're going Reds, I'm going Bulls. Another one. I'm splitting it like that. All right, next up, we're off to Growth Point Kings Park, where the Sharks are up against the Sunwolves, who hit the tour bus for the first time, or the tour plane. Let's talk about the Sharks here first. A couple of things I've noted down about them. Inconsistent, disappointing, gifting chances. Really, really good side.
Should have won against the Tars.
Yeah, but where's it gone wrong for them?
They're not. They're not clinical enough. They dominated that match against the Waratahs by a long way. Waratahs found a way to stay in it. And I don't know why the Sharks didn't put them away. It had a couple of very late chances as well. They should have won that match against the Tars. No idea why they didn't. A draw was not deserved from the Waratahs whatsoever. So I don't know. I don't know why the Sharks. They looked really good in a few patches. They scored some absolutely cracking tries. But again, their decision making, like taking a quick line out on your 40-meter line when you've got pressure on. Why? You just gave Michael Hooper a 55-meter try and kept the Waratahs in the game. So it's about the Sharks keeping their discipline and not making dumb decisions for a lot, which is big for a lot of South African Super Rugby sides.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the Waratahs at the end, I guess, when we cover their match, because they really should be 0-2. Really, I don't know how they are even into points at all. But the Sharks, yeah, got to definitely up the brain power, but really, really good side. Don't know how they didn't beat the Waratahs either on that one. But they're up against the Sunwolves now. The Sunwolves, injuries. The biggest concern for this team is injuries. They are dropping like flies running into a sticky bit of paper on the fence, whatever you call that. Travel, depth.
Yeah.
It's all coming together. Can they mould together a side that's actually going to be a challenge here for these Sharks?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm now thinking, should the Sunwolves be in Super Rugby now? I know it's tough, but it's just, what are they doing? I know they've got a ton of talent up there. They're one of the best structurally and best technique sides in the comp, but they were absolutely falling like flies against the Rebels. I think I counted 4 or 5 injuries in the first half. They're running out of players on the bench. It's disappointing because the Sunwolves, they do have a lot of talent. They've got a lot of technique over there, but, they never travel well. They barely win a match. And I don't know how long you can still be patient with the Sunwolves.
Interesting call, yeah. It's a question that's got to be asked, really, why these players aren't withstanding the pressures of the game. I got some comments when I said that last weekend about how they've got to play their domestic competition and then go straight to Super Rugby. But it's like, well, Australia plays Super Rugby and then goes to NRC. South Africa plays a Curry Cup and plays Super Rugby. New Zealand plays the Mitre 10 Cup and goes to Super Rugby. Everyone plays the domestic competition and Super Rugby in the same season. Everyone's playing 10 months out of the year, unless you're an international, which even play that much as well. So I don't think that's really an excuse. If anything, that should be more reason why they should be definitely good enough to stand up to that physical sort of play. But you do notice that it's the imports that do kind of stand up a lot more. Willie Prince, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the whole competition. He holds that team together, one man. But it's going to be tough for them to get anything out of this match on the road as well. Really entertaining at home. That first game, I thought they were really good. But I'm going the Sharks by 16 to win this one. What's your pick?
Yeah, I'm going Sharks by 25, and they need to stop passing the ball 15, 20 meters, 5 meters out from their own goal line. I mean, come on. Robbie Robinson almost gave one of the Rebels the easiest tries in the world. A pass straight into the post to give Tavita Kiranjani a try in the first game, which was just one of the most ridiculous tries I've ever seen. So, some Wolves need to fix out what they're doing. Jamie Joseph's great coach. I love him to bits, but he needs to start doing things a little bit differently or getting them battle hardened, because if the Sunwolves or the Japanese players can't withstand the speed and the power and the skill of Super Rugby, they're going to fall well behind and hardly win a game this season.
Okay, so we're both going with the Sharks to pull off big wins there over the Sunwolves. A couple of games still to go. Next up, this will be a good one. Lions up against the Blues. This one's at Ellis Park. The Blues are on the road. The Lions, home team first. I can only consider them to the Crusaders now. They're just rolling on. Their pack's got a bit of criticism, but I think they're holding up pretty well as well. Their backs, their back three, Diante, Mahuza, Kutsia, I think the best in the competition at the moment with electricness. They're just so good. Like the Crusaders, where does anyone find a weakness to beat this team? Do you think that there is anything you can pick on this Lions team and say they need to work on this?
No, I thought they should have won that Super Rugby title at home. that they should have won last season. Quagga Smith gave away that red card, and the rest was history. I mean, the Crusaders looked the better side in that final, but I don't know. The Lions, they've got so much talent across the field. Quagga Smith, Warren Whiteley, who I thought brought a lot back to the Lions. And then you're talking about the back line with Elton Yankees, and it's losing. Is it Fab Dupree? Is that Fab de Kock? Sorry, Fab de Kock.
Fab de
Fab Dupree. Fab de Klerk. That's right. I keep getting them all confused. Fab de Klerk, losing him to England absolutely sucked, but they've still got absolute talent all across the field. So the only thing I really do think is lacking from them is their distribution at 9.
Oh, so you're picking on the Springbok scrum half, even though wears the number 9 jumper for the national team. Interesting.
Yes, because Fab de Klerk is better than him.
I think Fab de Klerk had a better running game. Definitely, he was a lot more dangerous around the breakdown.
But it suited the style of the Lions much more, in my opinion.
Yes, and I think that it may have something to do with what the Springboks wanted as well. In fact, they went with Ross Cronje getting a lot more game time when, like you say, the Lions' style did suit Fab de Klerk brilliantly. And defensively, he was outstanding as well. So I agree. Huge loss to the Lions, but they've just, like the Crusaders, they just roll on. They just pick up another guy, and they just seem to get better and better. They're up against the Blues. The other Blues. There's a lot of hope, I think, of the Blues after that their first match against the Highlanders. They look good. They scored tries. They only just lost, but everyone's like, yeah, no, this Blues team, they could go all right this season. Do they even know how to win a game? Does that victory in the teens, the confidence, they go, yeah, we've won something, is that gone now? Is that completely out?
Tens mean nothing. No one brings their best team to the tens.
Confidence of victory, though. There's 30 guys that have gone, we've won something.
It doesn't matter. Waratahs destroyed the Rebels by 40 points in a preseason trial. Who cares? The Rebels won their first 2 games. The Tens is a joke. I don't really care about the Brisbane Tens, and I'm a hardcore rugby fan. So what the Blues winning that match when clearly they're winning that Tens when they clearly brought a few of their better players compared to the rest of the comp, it doesn't really mean much. Furthermore, how can you lose that match against the Chiefs when Chiefs had so many injuries? That's criminal. They're at home. They didn't have Brody Retallick. Stevenson wasn't there, and a raft of other injuries within the Chiefs, and somehow the Blues still couldn't get over the line. That's mental. Yeah,
it was crazy. Everyone was changing their picks for that match with those late injuries. Losing Retallick, was certainly going to weaken their pack, but you got to give credit to the Chiefs who aren't in action this weekend, which is probably good because they need the extra week to recover some players. But that just shows you what they've got, in the desire to win and wanting to get that victory. The Blues just can't seem to get over that mental break of winning a matchup, and it's not going to do them well for the season. Many were thinking, after that first game against the Highlanders, this Blues team could actually challenge and make maybe 3rd, 4th, maybe on the table, anything's better. Now, after that capitulation against the Chiefs, everyone's back to putting them in 5th as well. So even I picked the Blues. I picked the Blues to win that game versus the Chiefs, and that was before those last injuries. And I thought before that game, I was like, yeah, this is a sure thing. Blues are going to take this one. They just seem to have some massive lapses.
Is Tana Umaga not the coach that a lot of people think he was going to be?
I don't. Has anyone ever really seen what Tana Umaga really had offered as a coach before he actually come to the Blues? Because he did assist at Toulon for a bit, which doesn't really mean anything towards actually coaching a team. So no one really knows. I think he's getting a lot of time because of who he is. I mean, how many coaches have the Blues been through now? Kerwins and Lambs and all that. It's just disaster. How do you keep blaming the coach, or they've got a quality team? So
is there a setup problem there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Higher up than the coach could be
potentially.
Yeah, there's something definitely wrong with that Blues team if they're not gonna. They just can't get over the hump. They can't get that W, and massive losing streak now. The Chiefs as well. So it's probably a no-brainer who we're both going for here. But what's your pick?
Yeah. Lions by 14.
Lions by 14? I'm going Lions by 12. Yeah. So we're both going for Lions. That should be surely in Ellis Park a bit of an easy win. Okay, so final match of the weekend is the Jaguares at home, Buenos Aires. They're up against your team, the Waratahs, the team that should be 0-2, the team that somehow stay in the game and somehow pull out points and even victories from the jaws of defeat. They're the team that don't die. Teams just gift them too much. They take their chances. Like, okay, I got a fair bit to say about this Waratahs team now, because I agree with you now. For the things you've said, they are a team that takes chances. In their last match against the Sharks, they had very little ball. They had very little to work with, and they took chances. They scored points when they could, and they live off scraps. What do you put it down to? What's happened to the Waratahs? Why are they so resilient in 2018?
A huge part of it is the fitness. Huge part of it is the fitness. Waratahs would be in the game for 60 minutes last season and lose in the final 20. Now that Daryl Gibson and all the coaches, they brought in a couple assistant coaches from the Shute Shield, have absolutely destroyed the players. They're breaking personal records. They're absolutely running quicker than they ever have. They're fitter than they ever have. And it shows because they stay in the match. They continue to just somehow grind out and maintain a level sort of playing field without absolutely getting smoked across the park against the two South African sides. Their scrum is still a huge issue, really big issue. You're not going to win the comp with the current scrum setup that they currently have. But they're much fitter this season, which they identified. Am I really impressed by them? No. Do I need to see them play against a few Aussie sides and the Kiwi sides? Yes. Am I convinced that we're going to make the finals and semis and finals yet? No. Are we going to do better than last season? Definitely. So I'm very glad that the Waratahs have started off the season strong against two very good South African sides. And this match against the Guares is going to be interesting because I know that Guares have had a very slow start. But if we have a look at the game that they played last season in Sydney, the Guares absolutely smoked the Waratahs at home. So the Guares love their offloading and love their sort of style of play. So I'm not sure if that's a weakness against the Waratahs.
How much do you think the loss of Kurtley Beale's going to be? Because he is going to be out injured for some time.
Well, he was a huge part of why I thought the Waratahs was going to be this good, much better this year, that 9, 10, 12 combination in the Wallaby halves of Phipps, Foley, and Beale was going to be great with Israel Folau at 15. Would have been absolutely amazing. Problem is, though, is that I don't know what Daryl Gibson is doing because he brings about 50 or so minutes. He brings on Bryce Hegarty onto the field at fullback and puts Folau out in the wing where he gets no ball. So I've said I'm not a big fan of Bryce Hegarty at all, and I still stay by that. He's had a couple of good games to start the season. But I'm not sure what I'm not really sure what the backline is going to do, especially when Nick Phipps is still due back as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of shuffling going on that backline. I think it's a backline squad that is not very well constructed in the fact that they have a lot of players in the wings or the outside backs and not as many to fill the centre positions as well. So they could do with some players to fill holes, but I mean, strength-wise overall, the team is definitely, they're doing enough and they're scoring tries, they're playing well. As much as I hate Michael Hooper, he is having a pretty outstanding season so far as well. He's really stood up for this team.
You see his pace? You see his pace to go 60 metres?
He's always been quick. He's always been very, very quick. But he is always in the game. And I guess from the side of the Tasman, it's probably that's the reason why you dislike him so much. But very good player, and he stood up pretty well this season. So from a neutral standpoint, you've got to say he is definitely leading that side from the front, like you'd expect as well. Up against them will be the Jaguares. Now, what have you made of them this season? I mean, the discipline, falling of the heads, just falling away off matches, unable to take the points. And with a long run of home games as well, I think they're not away again until week 8 or 7 of the competition. These games are super important. Do you think they've got the ability or the talent to do this against the Waratahs team?
I honestly think they do because I saw the way the Guares played last season against the Waratahs. And I know last season isn't this season, but they absolutely destroyed the Waratahs in the pack. They destroyed them with the offloading capability. And the Jaguares have a slow start to the Super Rugby competition. Not good at all. But again, they've got so much talent. They pretty much got a national team in the Jaguares setup. Pretty much all of them has played at least one game for Argentina. So Why are the Warriors not doing any better? I just don't understand. They've got so much talent there, and I know they've got to play so many games on the road, but why are they not a more competitive team in this competition? I just don't know. Do they have the ability to beat the Waratahs? Yes, because I'm still not fully convinced by the Waratahs, but I do think this is a game that Waratahs can win and should win.
Do you think the Jaguares have improved, say, from last season to this season so far?
No. Why are we still talking about the Jaguares' discipline? Why are we still talking about how they've got the best scrum in the one of the best scrums in the competition? Why are we still talking about the amount of cards that they're getting? It's because they're not disciplined. Whoever's teaching them over there about rugby's discipline or not giving stupid penalties away needs to have a look at themselves. It's the same for France. France are giving so many dumb penalties away in the Six Nations this year that they're just killing themselves off and they can't win a game because of it. So the teams need to be disciplined. It's everyone. It says all the time when we keep talking about discipline, it is the fundamentals. Most teams don't give away a penalty for the sake of it. They give the penalties away for being unfit or being frustrated. And this is where the Mario Ledesma needs to be able to mentally get the Argentinians there and really get them up for this match. It'll be very interesting to see how Ledesma does go against a lot of players he has coached. So he was obviously the scrum coach of Australia for a while. It'll be interesting to see if he'll use that inside knowledge against the Waratahs at all. He's
going to be a big part of this team, and he's got the reps, he's got the pedigree, if you will, definitely to improve this team. And I expect they have to improve as well over the next, over this season. Over the season, they've got to definitely improve. So who are you going for between the Jaguares and the Waratahs?
I'll go Waratahs by 8.
Yep.
I'll go Waratahs by 8. I know that the Warriors got smoked by the Hurricanes, but they came off a South African tour. They were tired. They had to go back to Argentina, just like the Hurricanes had to go to Argentina. They'll be in their own beds this week, and they'll be in it for a long way. I hope the Waratahs, with the way that they're playing, do get the win here. If they don't beat the Jaguares, I don't think I see them doing much this season, the Waratahs. So I'm, again, quietly optimistic because we have had a couple of very, I would say, decent performances, but we haven't destroyed teams. And that's what we need to start doing, is really starting to score tries out of nothing and not drop the ball, because that happens all the time. They just drop the ball like it's a piece of jelly or a bar of soap. So Waratahs need to fix that up. I'm sure they will, but Waratahs by 8 against the Argentinian Juarez.
I've gone Waratahs by 5 on my side of things. Agree with what you're saying here. The Waratahs, they're lucky not to be 0-2. They're lucky to have points on the board. And, that's just good dedication by the team as well, which I think is a pretty good asset to have. But, definitely a lot for them to improve on over the upcoming season, which that does wrap us up for the whole round's matches. Anything you'd like to add on round 4 before we wrap up?
I've got 2 things I want to talk to you about current Super Rugby. Nothing about round 4, current state of Super Rugby. So, First thing is first, are you happy with the format this year? Are you happy with the teams being back to 15? Because we've discussed this. Super Rugby is much more competitive this year. It's much more unpredictable. I feel like the standard of rugby's already gone up, but it doesn't seem to have engaged the fans as much as previous seasons. Is that maybe because Super Rugby's a dying product, or why do you think the fans aren't as engaged when Sansa clearly wants to engage the fans on a big level? Are people growing tired of the product, or do you think it's just the craziness that Super Rugby comp is?
There was like 100 questions in that. But I still think there's definite difference in the quality of games between the 3 conferences. Is it better? Is it worse?
Yeah.
I don't know if the quality's any better or worse. I definitely think we've seen market improvements in Africa. Is that because the Kings and Cheetahs are gone? No. It's because the Kings and Cheetahs are still there. Their players just gone elsewhere now. So very, very few Kings or Cheetahs players actually came into the current Super Rugby setup. For Australia, it's definitely helped the Rebels. Has it helped their quality of play? It's still up for debate. I find it hard to say that it is definitely at this stage. Is the competition better or not? Yeah, it's. I don't think it's better. No, definitely not. Less teams, probably, it does help with the oversaturation, I guess, of rugby on the market. Definitely helps with that. But it's definitely killed off a large area of Australian rugby, that's for sure, getting rid of the Western Force, which is probably the biggest shame about it. is it worth complaining about and going on about? Not really. It's what's happened.
Well, they've got 8 games this season. So, and then they've got the Indo Rugby Pacific competition. So it's great to see. I'm actually quite excited to see the Force actually play Tonga, Samoa, Hong Kong, Fiji. These matches are all interesting. They're also playing the Rebels and the Crusaders in that June window. So the Force are still playing matches. They're still there. They're going to be there in the Indo Rugby Pacific competition. But I just don't understand. I don't see Super Rugby surviving past this this deal, this corporate deal. I just don't see the fans being engaged like they were 10 years ago.
It's a bit hard to have their team playing when 30 of their players are playing for the Rebels. It's not really their team anymore, is it? It's a whole new team. The cult heroes are gone. Yeah, the players that they liked are gone. It's the week in, week out of seeing them in the competition is gone. I think it doesn't really what competition it is. Obviously, interest has been waning for a long, long time. I don't think especially in New Zealand, you couldn't probably get higher level club rugby, which is what it is playing out. And I think the matches have been super entertaining. There's been no drab games over here. Which isn't saying that it's better than anything else, but I mean you got to say entertainment value of 40-50 point games is pretty good. But what does it take to fix? Who knows? And I don't think it's going to die, but definitely competition from other competitions will definitely be interesting in the future. And South Africa is always going to be the key. That's the key to Southern Hemisphere rugby. If they decide to jump with the Cheetahs and the Kings the whole way, then that will be that nail in the coffin for sure. They'll be definitely gone.
Yeah, I just find it interesting because crowds are Waratah's game got 12,000 or something. Rebels game got 10,000. Reds, some of the most passionate fan base in all of Australia, only got 11,000 on the weekend against the Brumbies in the Aussie Derby. So maybe that's just the state of Australian rugby, but there's a lot of fans still watching the product. TV ratings are doing fine, are doing well, but I don't really see the current state of Super Rugby with South Africa, Argentina, and Japan all being in it going to stay. I see a Tasman competition coming in the next few years. Have 6 teams out of New Zealand, have 4 in Australia, and maybe 2 or something in the Pacific Islands and Japan. I think that's the future of Super Rugby.
Well, that's what it is. You nailed it on the head, isn't it? It's easy to go home and go click and sit on the couch. Then get into traffic, go in your car, bus somewhere, get a train, whatever it is that you get there, however it is you get there, and then go sit in the stand when it's pouring with rain and it's cold. I mean, the atmosphere is what you go for in those sorts of things. And when there is no atmosphere...
It's dead. The atmosphere is dead.
That's what I mean. You go for the atmosphere. And when there is no atmosphere, you just stay at home. So, it's one thing gives to another. A good atmosphere gives to better crowds. And if you're not having one, you're not having the other. So... it's definitely believable. I think if South Africa do jump ship, then that's the only other option they've got left, isn't it? To make a Trans-Tasman sort of thing, and then we'll just kick Australia's ass every weekend. Sounds good.
Oh, exactly right. It doesn't help they're playing 50k stadiums each weekend.
Yeah, looks bad.
I don't understand why they don't have a couple of 20k stadiums which they play out of and have it full with a good atmosphere, and that will engage the fans again instead of having 45,000 and only 12,000 show up at Allianz Stadium. It creates no atmosphere, and I don't want to go when I'm the only person in the block of people. I mean, it's not fun.
And
I mean, the Sevens is great, but because the entire crowd was crazy and engaged, and the atmosphere was amazing. But when it comes to Super Rugby, only 25% of the stadiums filled up. It just doesn't work.
And like you say, small stadiums, you look at Dunedin, Forsyth Bars, only about 30,000, I think. Christchurch, that little stadium that they got there, is even less. But you see that packed. Sure, that's a result of their success, yes, to a point. But it's a small stadium. It looks full. It looks good. And it's a good noise out of the crowd. Indoor stadium, you're always going to get great atmosphere, even when it's half full. I've been there in a half full stadium, and it still sounds like it's got a packed house. That comes down to a lot of it. But maybe that's the future of the way forward. Smaller stadiums and bigger TV deals. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, exactly right.
Any second point you got there, or was that both your points?
Well, that's pretty much... I mean, I've talked about 5 different things in that sort of thing. Because I think the Super Rugby product is better this year. I haven't been excited this year as much as last year's. I don't know if that's just because the Waratahs have played garbage the last couple of years, but I'm still excited for every weekend. I'm still excited to watch the Super Rugby games. It's not like it's a drab that it was last year, but I just, it's very, very hard to see how Super Rugby is going to survive past 2020 in its current state. I just can't see it happening.
It's still, a few years away, a few years of action still to go. It's excited. I was excited for Super Rugby this year, mainly because I took very, very little notice of Northern Hemisphere action over the end of the year last year. So,
but see, that's the thing. I watched a lot of the Six Nations this year, and it's just been amazing. Like, I've never enjoyed the Six Nations more than ever this year, because it's maybe a different style of rugby that I don't see every day and every week. Scotland beating England also helps that, but the Six Nations this year has been absolutely incredible, and I don't understand why we can't have that sort of environment down in the south, where the rugby is actually played at a much more entertaining style. Yeah,
it's different, isn't it? It's a great crowd, great support, but definitely the level of rugby's not up to the scratch as what it is down here. So, it's something you've got to look at. What's different? What makes the people go to the stadiums? What makes people go and support their team? Even their club stuff. You know, you see Viva Premiership, pro footy in games, definitely a lot fuller than what we see down here. So, you know, it's a research thing. Send someone to the games, find out why. There'll be something attracting people. And people in the comments that go to those games will probably tell us what it is as well. Why do you go watch your team play in the Northern Hemisphere? Why do you not go as well? Let us know in the comments. But if you've got nothing else to add,
not really.
He's done for today. Thanks for joining us. As always, we've gone on way too long. It seems to be a regular thing. Where can people find you if they want to check out what you do? If they don't know who you are, I mean, God, been on so many times, but give yourself a shout out. What's going on in the life of the Cannon?
Well, I'm just doing my thing, just doing a bit of Super Rugby stuff on my channel. Obviously, I don't know what I'm really doing for content. You know, Rugby 18 is pretty much dead. I'm still doing rugby, still uploading after a few years. So still here, still enjoying it more than ever on YouTube. So come check me out. I'm sure Cornflake will put my link in the description below.
Always. We'll be there, as always. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully we'll get you back in a few weeks' time as well and have some more chat and see how your Waratahs are going. But until then, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.